How's it going, everybody? My name is Mike from Box and Jackalope, and welcome back to episode 3 of the Kun-Lai Campfire. Today, Skull Shorties and Jakai and I are going to talk about Vanilla WoW through Cataclysm and what our thoughts and experiences were, and I want to thank these two guys for being on again. Welcome back, guys.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Hello.
Dude, thank you guys for being on. And, so we're going to start with Vanilla WoW tonight, because I think Classic WoW is a topic that a lot of people are concerned with right now, and I think it'd be kind of cool for us to just reminisce on what our experience was, whether if you guys even played back then. What is it? What do you guys think about, I guess, when you look at Classic WoW? Because I have a lot of stories I could tell about it, but I want to hear what you guys think.
So I played Classic WoW when I was like 8 years old, and
Sorry.
Back then I had very... How dare you cough during my but I started playing Classic WoW when I was 8 years old on my brother's account, and I had just recently played Warcraft 3, I think. I can't honestly remember if I played Warcraft 3 before or after I started playing WoW, but my brother let me play a Warlock, or an Orc Warlock, basically, on his account. And, I had very little idea what I was doing. I could barely read at that point, even though I was 8. I don't know how many people could actually read when they were 8, but I had trouble, but that's because I was slow. But I started playing WoW, and I did the quests, and I honestly just auto-attacked things. I didn't read it. Just auto-attacked things that I thought was part of the quest, and that's basically what I did. I only got up to, like, the Barons, and I was a Warlock, and back then Warlocks could summon demons and all that, like they can now, but, you had to do these quest chains to get your new demon, and I was only able to get my Imp. I think my brother got my Voidwalker for me at the time, and, it was neat, but, then my parents were like, okay, this game is way too violent for an 8-year-old, and yeah, I got booted off of it, and then I started playing Warcraft 3 instead, and they booted me off of that not even like shortly after, and I wasn't allowed to play World of Warcraft until Wrath of Lich King, honestly. I didn't get to see Burning Crusade when it was current content.
That's a feels bad man moment. So I just want to carry off of what you just said about Vanilla WoW, because I was very much the same way. So my older brother, Rob, he got Vanilla WoW for Christmas, and I was watching him play it for a few days. I remember like it was yesterday. He made a human paladin on Lothar named Robertos, and at the time, I wanted to. He told me you could get a pet if you played a hunter, so I made a night elf hunter, and I basically did the same thing. I just kind of auto attacked everything, but my goal was to get to level 10, which felt like an eternity back then, trying to get there. And little did I know, because I played a night elf, to get a bear, I had to go all the way to Dunmoreau. So I had to do the famous wetlands run back then, and I got killed by many crocodiles throughout that. But that was probably one of my best vanilla memories. And the bear I tamed, by the way, his name was Pandas, and that has nothing to do with my love for Pandaren, but I just like panda bears, and yeah.
In Vanilla, I was playing casually at best. My brother brought me into the game, and all we really did was PvP. I just did whatever he wanted to do.
Mm-hmm.
I played a gnome rogue from, vanilla all the way up to Cata, and a mage as well on the side. That mage actually today's my alliance main. So yeah.
Oh, is that the one that you made it to the Pandaren mage?
Yep.
Nice,
Yeah.
nice.
Yeah, I race changed him sometime in Mists of Pandaria, and yeah.
So,
He's been my alliance main since.
So this is actually random, but it's related to, I guess, Vanilla WoW a little bit. But last week, Skull and I talked about the Mognathal and Rexxar. Rexxar in Warcraft 3, I really liked Misha a lot, too. That was one of my reasons for wanting a bear when I played my hunter. But just thought I'd throw that in there.
I wish I'd have played a hunter at the time, because I created a lot of them. I thought it was pretty cool looking back now how, they had, the happiness and how you had to worry about your ammo and you had your quivers, such like that.
There was like a lot of like, I don't want to say like nostalgic depth to them, but I remember like you said, you had to worry about your quivers, you had to worry about your arrows. I remember one night in the Molten Core, I ran out of arrows in the middle of the raid, so that was fun. So I had to go to the auction house and grab more of them. And they were expensive as hell, too. God. What was it, the True Silver arrows or something you needed as a hunter? For, like, Molten Core and Blackwing Lair? It was crazy, I remember.
Yeah.
To get gold, I farmed whelps in the Badlands and sold them at the auction house.
Nice.
There's probably a million other ways I could have done it, but that's how I did it in Vanilla.
Yeah, I wish I played a hunter back then. I didn't even know there was a hunter class. I might have known, but 8-year-old me was like, "Ooh, I get to summon demons. That sounds awesome." I definitely not a problematic thing for a child to say when they were like, "I want to summon demons." Oh boy.
I forget what grade I was in. 4th grade, I think, when Vanilla first came out in 2004. But gosh, it's crazy looking back at it now.
Yeah. I might have tried one if gnomes were able to be them, but at the time I only really like gnomes. Sue me.
No,
but,
I mean,
dude, gnomes are
fine.
awesome.
I think we can all agree that here. I mean, I play a gnome warrior as my alliance main, and if they ever do Tinker, I'll probably make that my alliance main.
Don't worry, guys. I'm a proud Lightforge Paladin player for my alliance main. It's great. I love that.
Get that out of here.
Get this guy out of here.
Realistically, and this is something I need to do someday. I need to go back, level Pandaren on the alliance, and forget I ever had. Actually, for my alliance main, gosh, Vanilla WoW was no. I'm sorry. Burning Crusade was the last time I had a real alliance main, but we'll get to that later on. But back to Vanilla, I guess one of the reasons why I look at Vanilla so fondly, when I try not to I made a WoW tier list of expansions with that tier list maker thing, but I try not to compare Vanilla to the other expansions because I consider it its own thing.
Yeah,
I'm kind of nervous with how it's gonna hold up in WoW Classic. I know a lot of people are excited. I am excited. I'm 50-50, right? I'm somewhere on the fence. I'm excited to play it, but I'm also nervous it's not gonna be as fun as I remember it being, and I don't know if I'm gonna enjoy it more than retail or as much nowadays after I've played it so much. I think the community aspect is, I know this is a broken record, but a lot of people I think enjoy it for that.
Yeah.
That's something
for sure.
That's really it's not lacking in current WoW. Honestly, I always still meet friends now on WoW, but you come across them more in Vanilla just through your travels through Azeroth. I think that's something that I know Blizzard said they want to address in the modern WoW that they said recently. But I think that's where a lot of people consider Vanilla the best experience of World of Warcraft was because of that. I think I'm curious to see how the gameplay is going to be compared now, because I actually kind of like how WoW has gotten more fast-paced over the years. I don't like, per se, the less buttons, but I do like how it feels faster in a weird way. I want to hear what you guys think about that from the gameplay side of things, if you remember, because it was so long ago. Because it's still rusty for me.
I will say, I was gonna say I hardly remember a thing. I mean, like I said, the majority of what we did was PvP. But even with just doing PvP, there was a lot of, I would say, RPG-esque, just role-playing kind of aspects to the game that just aren't there anymore. It would have seemed it was a little annoying, having to make your poisons, having to level up weapon skills, having to do all these little things, but there was a sense of accomplishment, really. And now these things are all already there. You don't have to level up your skill with two-handed weapons and all these things, but at the same time, all of your characters still will kind of feel the same once you're at max. You can make one character and then another, and they're just going to feel like another of your all. There
was a lot more, I would say, I guess, hidden reward to some of your actions in Vanilla. Like you were saying, the weapon skill. Hell, completing a 5-man dungeon sometimes felt like a really big task if it was one of the more difficult ones. My favorite when I was younger was Scarlet Monastery, trying to farm on my hunter. I tried to farm the mail gear for when I hit level 40 to prepare for it. I'm like, yeah, I'm gonna be able to use mail, so I need all the mail I can get from Scarlet Monastery. Even if I don't even remember if the stats were good for hunters, I doubt it. But it was just funny just trying to get that.
Yeah.
Oh man, that was there's a lot of good times in Vanilla. I mean, I'm excited to kind of go back and play it. I think it's gonna be fun for a little while. I don't know about long term for me, but I am excited to go revisit it.
Heck yeah, me too.
But
I'm I'm the I think I'm the black sheep here because basically my experience of Classic WoW was so little, and I experienced most of it in Wrath of the Lich King technically when leveling, but again it's different compared to when it was current content. But I think it's because I didn't experience as much Classic WoW. I don't yearn for it per se. I guess really I'm not too crazy about it is really the thing. I'm definitely excited to see old Ogremar again, Thrall as the war chief again. Those are the things I'm excited for, and I'm definitely excited to play with my friends. But I don't see myself playing Classic WoW or hyping it as much. If anything, I've said this countless times, I'm hyped for Warcraft 3 Forge because I have a lot more fond memories of that because 8-year-old me could definitely grasp the storytelling of Warcraft 3, thankfully. Even though 8-year-old really shouldn't be repeating the stuff that they did, and I did on the bus, and that's kind of where it all started. Why I was not allowed to play Warcraft till I was 11 to kind of understand what I was doing. But I definitely, yeah, I'm definitely excited for Classic WoW, and I'm happy that other people are getting it. But I think ultimately I'm very happy with how WoW is today, and that's just how I stand on it basically is. I know again a lot of people are happy, and a lot of people are they bash WoW as it is, but I think the changes that they did are really good, and I'm happy with what they did.
To clarify something too, actually, I'm definitely not unhappy with current WoW in its current state. I think the game has made tremendous improvements over the years, and honestly, I'm more excited to find out the ending of BFA than WoW Classic, if that makes any sense. I agree though, it's gonna be cool to go back and revisit some of the old spots and such, you know what I mean? Just revisit some of, I guess, my childhood almost, you know what I mean, in a weird way. I'm hoping it's just as fun as it was, but I don't think I think because, obviously everyone's played this game for years and years, I don't know if it's gonna be like it was, obviously, when everyone goes back to it. That's what I'm curious to see at this point in time.
Yeah.
If that makes any sense about it.
Yeah, I might blow your mind, so I don't think I mentioned this before. I never actually played the original Warcrafts.
Wow, the RTS games?
Didn't at all.
I mean, I never played Warcraft 1 or Warcraft 2, but I played Warcraft 3.
Yeah,
Definitely.
I never played them. I wish I had. So I didn't really have that investment before I hopped into WoW.
Well,
But, yeah, I just wanted to add that.
you can play Reforged when it comes out, though, and that'll be really good.
Yeah, heck yeah.
That's gonna be something you're gonna want to hop into, Kai.
Yeah, I definitely will. It's as soon as I can.
You will enjoy the hell out of it.
I do love RTS games, but I won't get into that here.
I could spend the whole episode of this on Vanilla WoW, but I think you guys a general consensus for me is I considered Vanilla WoW in its own tier because it's I guess what started everything. I try not to compare it to the other expansions in terms of quality, I guess what I'm trying to say. I kind of just consider it its own thing. Would you guys agree with that? Or...
I was gonna say, looking back, it really was its own game. I know you've already touched on the social aspect, but that really was one of the biggest defining bits of Classic, was just not having queues, not having LFR, not you had to communicate. There was no cross server stuff. You knew the people that you saw every day, even if they were on the opposite faction. Yeah, or just, acknowledge their existence. And I've already said, one of the biggest things was PvP for me. My brother brought me into the game doing that, but I would say one of the smallest touches that I think contributed a lot. And back then, it wasn't quite as easy to speak, cross faction, get around. There wasn't Discord servers and all that. And I don't know, there was a sense of there's a word for it, but you didn't really know when cities were going to be attacked and when all this stuff was going to go down. You couldn't even have two characters of the opposite faction on the same server back then.
Oh, I remember that. Well,
yeah.
could you on a normal server? Or was just the PvP ones? I forget, actually. I think it might have just been the PvP servers, but I don't know for sure.
I don't know either. I think I played on normal servers as well. I think it was like that.
Mhm.
I played mostly on PvP servers, so I could be wrong. But
Actually, I can confirm it. It was on normal servers. You could have both because I had a troll warrior on the same server as my night elf hunter.
back in vanilla, really?
Yeah.
No kidding. Huh.
Shady's the dark spear warrior. That was an interesting time. But yeah, so I guess one thing I'd like to transition into with you guys is we'll start with like Burning Crusade was like the pre-launch stuff beforehand, and like I remember at the time it didn't click with me like my 4th grade, 5th grade self that like new races were coming out. But I remember my brother came home with Burning Crusade the day it came out, and I saw all it was like a few weeks before it, I saw all the new features, so I knew about the new races. But I remember Draenei and Blood Elves like blew my mind when they came out. I love the Blood Elves because I always thought Kael'thas was really cool in Warcraft 3.
Yeah.
So my first Blood Elf was a mage. He never made it past like level 18 or something, if I remember, in Burning Crusade. I did, however, have a Draenei priest that made it to max level. And he was my main for a long time in BC. I didn't really play him much after that, but Burning Crusade, he was the guy I rated on. It had an overall good experience on. But what did you guys think of like those as the first new races Blizzard did in BC?
You want to start on that one?
I guess. I mean, again, I didn't really play Burning Crusade, but here's the thing. Even if I didn't play Burning Crusade, my brother and my mom, this is where things got interesting, is my mom started playing World of Warcraft in Burning Crusade. My brother got her hooked into it. You know, that's where basically instead of, stopping me from playing in, I was supposed to wait till I was a teenager, actually. So I would have to wait till Cataclysm, actually, to play. My mom, she loosened up and let me play when I was 11 in Wrath of the Lich King, when that came out. But I got to watch my mom and my brother play the Burning Crusade and the pre-launch event and all that, and it was really cool. When they announced the Blood Elves and the Draenei, I really liked the Blood Elves from Warcraft 3, like you said, with Kael'thas. I really liked them. The Draenei, had no idea who they were. I was like, is that... I was really like confused because I never heard of the Draenei, and they were something that they added in World of Warcraft's lore. Although we later learned the Broken, like a comma, were the same thing. Much later.
Yeah,
but,
like they confused the hell out of me too. But I always liked their design when they were added into the game when I was younger. My first one I named... Well, actually, I didn't name it this, but I remember there was a million of them named Squidward on launch day in that starting area.
My God. That just reminds me of the Avengers Infinity War, where Iron Man says the Squidward. Shut up, Squidward! It doesn't even really have a Squidward nose, but you know what? I'll take it. But I really enjoyed... why am I'm talking about Avengers? Oh, whoop.
A whole nother episode on that.
A whole nother episode on that, we will. But the Draenei world, what I was going to say is I really enjoyed the cinematic, because I got to see that, because Illidan, I really liked Illidan when I was a kid. I thought Illidan was the coolest thing, and I thought, his whole thing with Tyrande and Malfurion, and his whole plan to fight the Lich King, I always thought that plot was really cool, to have Illidan pinned against Arthas, because that was kind of referenced in Warcraft 3 Reign of Chaos, like them fighting, and they were like, we're tied, we can't win, neither of us can win. You finally...
Oh, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, but I recall in Burning Crusade, I think, like, in the lore, like, Illidan thought he beat Arthas, but he didn't. Like, that's how badly he lost at Warcraft 3.
He was fooling him. Like, the thing about Burning Crusade that I'm going to bring up here is it got retconned. It was the biggest retcon bomb I ever saw.
It was.
And, in WoW's lore, they retconned a lot of stuff with Chronicles, and honestly, I think it's a good thing in some instances. I did not like... The thing about Burning Crusade that I didn't like was that they made Kael'thas evil, like, 100% evil. Like, he betrayed Illidan. You betrayed the betrayer. Like, okay. you messed up, buddy. And then you learn Illidan wasn't such a bad guy, and I was like, alright, I'm fine with that. but Kael'thas selling his people out to kill Jaden, becoming basically the new Gul'dan for the story. Basically, it was. I really liked Kael'thas, and seeing him go down that route was disappointing. And they brought him back, and he still does the same thing. Like, there was no real reason to bring him back, honestly, besides, hey, I was totally on Kill Jaden's side 24/7.
I was really surprised when I was younger that Kael'thas was a villain after Warcraft 3. I was like, really? When I was younger, like I didn't really want to fight him, and it was like, back then I couldn't really comprehend what was going on in Burning Crusade, and nowadays it kind of makes sense why.
Yeah.
I was just like, okay, I guess Illidan's evil and Kael'thas, okay, they're the bad guys of this expansion. When I was younger, I didn't really know what was going on. I remember one thing about BC that I did really enjoy when I was younger was like the art style. Like one of the moments I don't think I'll ever forget in World of Warcraft is stepping through the Dark Portal for the first time into Hellfire Peninsula, seeing the Pit Lord sieging it. That was holy crap, that was one of the coolest moments in gaming for me. Like, I was just mind blown about it. And honestly, Hellfire Peninsula still is my favorite zone in Burning Crusade for that reason. As crazy as that sounds.
Yeah, I was always very partial to Zangarmarsh. Thought it was beautiful out there. I just loved the blue.
What I enjoyed about the zones from Burning Crusade is probably, I'm probably gonna get a lot of hate for this, but I really didn't like the destroyed look of Outlands. Like, I remembered Hellfire Peninsula from Warcraft 3, so I was fine with that.
Mm-hmm.
But zones like honestly, the majority of Outlands was just this destroyed, wrecked planet. It makes sense. It made total sense in the lore because of what happened to it, with all the portals opening up and just the planet being bombarded with too much, basically, around it. But my favorite zone was Nagran because it looked beautiful, and just the story that it told with Thrall and Garrosh, and honestly, it just paved the way for so much in WoW's future with Garrosh and Thrall.
If you really think about it, that's where everything that led to BFA started.
Basically, like, what current WoW is all because of Burning Crusade, which makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
It's really, I mean, it's a fascinating expansion when you look back at it. Kai, I want to hear what you had to say first. I didn't mean to cut you off. I apologize.
No, you're fine. I was just gonna say, I completely forgot about Negron whenever I mentioned Zangarmarsh. Man, Negron was absolutely gorgeous. Back then, I wasn't quite into the lore yet, so I'll be honest, I don't really have much to say when it comes to that. But whenever it comes to aesthetics, though, I would say I did very much like Burning Crusade, and found it pretty hilarious. The invasion of the Legolases, like on day one, it was crazy.
I will agree with you, Kai. Visually, BC still is one of my favorites. Just for how unique it is compared to everything else, with the exception of Warlords basically being Burning Crusade, but not destroyed yet.
I really liked that's what they did with Warlords of Draenor, though, that they basically had this planet and showing what it was before it got destroyed. It's a shame we didn't get to see what's it called? It's the purple zone.
Oh, Netherstorm, Farallon.
Netherstorm. Yeah, we never got to see Netherstorm or Farallon, sadly, because it got scrapped like most things in Warlord.
Yeah, that always upset me too. Actually, that was one of my biggest upsets in Warlords.
We'll get to Warlords in the next video.
Yeah.
But
I can't wait for it though.
That's gonna be a fun one. But I liked some of the art style in Burning Crusade, but I personally think that they just got better and better the more they made expansions with their art style and just everything.
100%.
Yeah,
It's one of the things that still holds up for me from Burning Crusade. I actually really enjoyed the dungeons of that expansion. A lot of them are still pretty fun to play through now, with a few exceptions, but I always liked the diversity in them that we had. You had the Blood Elf ones and the Draenei spaceships and Netherstorm. The Hellfire Ramparts ones were my favorite, like the Blood Furnace, Shattered Halls. I don't know why, something about fighting the Fell Orcs was really cool when I was younger. That being said, though, guys, I don't want to cut off discussion of the dungeons, but do you guys think if Burning Crusade was made now, like as an expansion, do you think its quality is as good as the other ones? I know it's probably a weird question. Do you think it holds up well nowadays compared to other things? Like, that's one thing I was really curious about when we decided to do this episode.
I will say, if it was exactly as it is now, mechanically and everything, it would be solid, in my opinion. Like I said, I didn't really pay too much attention to lore and all that at the time, but what I remember, especially like the dailies and stuff, it was pretty cool. Like, I greatly enjoyed the reprints, and in fact, I'm doing them all over again right now. But I don't know. I've always thought there was so much potential for the factions, and I know we've covered, or I kind of briefly touched on this before, not in a video, but how they could have done so much with the scheme of the whole Aldor and Skyers thing. I really wish they could have capitalized on something like that. Like, if it was probably a bit before its time to do something like that then, but like with now, I think the game would be so much better and just more awesome if they were to make more battlegrounds and, you know, PvP content based on decisions like that, instead of just always being aligned with this horde. You know, you could have had a battleground where you're Aldor versus Scryers, where you're this versus that, you know, come up with unique cosmetic rewards, but have the utility rewards be the same on both sides. You get what I'm saying?
Yeah, no. That's actually a wonderful idea, having more of your story choices. Like, for example, if people are watching this and they didn't play back then, say you had to pick between Sylvanas and Sarfang's horde and there was like a battleground. Something like that. That would be freaking awesome, Kai. Wonderful idea.
Yeah, I was gonna say that's a rough example to work with, because obviously you have to incorporate alliance races into, and obviously for the most part it's gonna be greatly imbalanced and people are gonna be against Sylvanas in that sense. But like, you know,
I mean, that's realistic at least.
Yeah. But I would say, like, I don't want to go too much into it because I know we're supposed to be keeping on the expansions right now.
Right.
Gosh, I really do want to.
We'll discuss the Sylvanas stuff soon.
Soon.
That's for another day, again.
That was a feature that probably was ahead of its time. And I guess to follow up on what I said, I don't think that Burning Crusade's a bad expansion. In fact, compared to everything that I've played now, I stick it somewhere smack dab in the middle. I almost consider it something of its time. Probably wouldn't hold up as well now for me. However, when I was a kid, I was pretty damn impressed by it, and it definitely deserves all the praise it gets from people, you know. But I've got to be the bad guy here. It really doesn't help that I never experienced it when it was current content, and I think that's the main reason why I'm so impartial to it, like everybody else is. Again, I think that if I played it during current day, maybe I'd be a little bit nicer with it, but I don't think it holds up at all nowadays. I skip it every chance I get when it's time to level in Outlands. I'm bored when I do the quests, and I can't do the zones anymore. I used to have, when I did it the first time, I thought it was fine. I was like, okay, this is great, it's cool, it's interesting. It was during Wrath of the Lich King, so the times were so much more different. But when you come, go ahead. Oh no, with the way that quests are made now, that leveling is probably the worst in WoW right now. Like current WoW, it's atrocious nowadays. At the time it was cool, but now it's like, oh gosh, going back and playing that now, which, not to go back to Classic WoW, that's what concerns me about WoW Classic, going back and playing Burning Crusade stuff, because I feel like it's going to be kind of reminiscent of that still, like if I remember correctly, the way the gameplay was. I might be dead wrong about that. Somebody's going to slap me in the face in the comments about it, but
I'm sure I'm going to get the most hate because I'm so against Burning Crusade and Classic WoW when I compare it to other expansions. But I just don't think that Burning Crusade holds up now, but back in the day, I'm sure it did. I'm sure that it was amazing. I'm sure that for its time, it was everybody's favorite expansion, and that's why a lot of people hold it up. As I see a lot of people, they say Burning Crusade is the best expansion, or they say Wrath is the best expansion, usually.
Right.
Yeah. It was good. like I said, I mostly PvP'd, but yeah, it was definitely fun.
I definitely enjoyed it from like some of the like minor things. Like I really liked like I said when I was younger. I really, and still now, I really like the environments. I loved the new races at the time. And because WoW's gameplay was still kind of new and fresh, that's where I get my good memories from it. So like I still have fond memories of it. Like I went on that tier list website. I'd put BC smack dab in the middle of everything still nowadays, just for my nostalgia for it, if that makes any sense alone. It's something that if they made a classic server for, I wouldn't be opposed to going back and trying it again and seeing what it's like nowadays. One thing that I did like about BC and classic WoW, and this is where I'll end this topic, is the way that raids were structured. I really liked the idea of you having to go through every raid tier. It was a pain in the ass, and I understand why it's not like that anymore, but it was pretty cool having to, progress through every raid tier, even when a new one came out. It was a little bit more hardcore because obviously not everyone would be able to see the content, and that's a problem, but I did quite like that from a gearing perspective. I thought it was more fun, and it was kind of cool seeing the mix match of people like, oh, this guy has some tier 1, some tier 2, you know what I mean? Like that's something I really enjoyed when I was younger, about BC especially, and vanilla. But
yeah, I definitely agree with that. Use a lot less, no LFR and such.
no catch up stuff, which was I mean, it's that nowadays I like that.
I love that.
But
for somebody like me who doesn't raid seriously anymore and doesn't have a raiding guild or people to raid with, LFR and looking for dungeon is just a blessing to me. I know for other people it's like, oh, it's too easy. You need to be able to ask in trade chat and general chat, but general chat and trade chat to me is just so toxic now. It's like going through a shitpost, basically.
But that was your balancing back then, is like, yeah, you could trade chat and stuff like that, people can be shitty or controversial or whatever, but back then you had to kind of work together to get
where's Mancrank?
Outland.
I don't outright hate the current gear system. Like I wouldn't really be able to do anything current nowadays, like if I played during BC now, with the way just like I wouldn't have the time to do the old gearing system, so I really like it in that aspect. And I also think the way the game's structured now, the current gearing system works because the way the lore works, it's very story heavy. I think everyone deserves a chance to get to see how the story wraps up of each expansion, because like WoW is almost like, in some aspects, some aspects, it's like a single player RPG in a way, the way the story works with the war campaign, order halls, and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So that's why I think features like that nowadays are pretty important, and that was something that was lacking from Burning Crusade, because not a lot of people would have ever got to even see Illidan Stormrage and all that. But I think I'd like to move on to Wrath of the Lich King, if you guys are good with that.
Yeah.
I will
talk about this.
I will talk about the transitional period. I loved the pre-event. I still use my Tabard of the Argent Dawn from that.
Me too.
And my Batling that you got from Karazhan. I unfortunately never got the two-handed axe model from that, which kills me, the Arcanite Ripper. But I always wish I got that back then. So, Wrath of the Lich King, my memory of that, I actually remember my dad took me to the midnight release for that, and I still have the poster on my wall from it. It's all torn up nowadays, but I still have it hanging proudly there. So I was one of those people that I did roll a Death Knight when it first launched, just because of how much I loved Arthas and Warcraft 3. I played a human Death Knight, actually, and I just remember getting up at 5 a.m., 3 a.m. I took the day off and played WoW all day on my Death Knight, and it was crazy. There was 5-man Death Knight groups in Hellfire Peninsula doing ramparts. It was just awesome. But the thing that stood out to me the most about that was this was the start of World of Warcraft having some more story-driven quest chains, and I noticed that as soon as I did the Death Knight starting zone area. That moment with Tyrion Fordring and Darien and the Lich King at the end of it, there wasn't anything like that in WoW, really, with the voice acting and such. Well, there was voice acting, obviously, but there wasn't any, how do I explain it, story-driven quests that had a conclusion like that, it felt like, at least.
It was engaging.
Yeah.
The voice acting was very minimal in Burning Crusade, as far as I remember. Mostly boss fights and raids, but not really in quests.
Exactly. And so the first time I did that when I was younger, I was like, this is so cool. this is nuts. And I don't think I'll ever forget the moment of getting off the boat and Howling Fjord into this war zone in Northrend, like against the Vrykul. I will never forget that. I remember I just wanted to, on my deathbed I was like, okay, I want to get through Burning Crusade, get to Wrath, and get right into it. And that was something I will never forget. Burning Crusade was the last time I really played my Draenei Priest until Cataclysm. But yeah, no, that was unforgettable for me. Howling Fjord was where I wanted to start because of the first Wrath trailer. I was like, that's the zone. That's where I'm going. And
beautiful.
It's still probably one of my favorite looking zones in the game, if not my favorite. With definitely my favorite soundtrack. And WoW was that song.
Have you heard the Storm Peaks music? Gosh, it's beautiful.
There's a reason my channel is called Skull Shorties. that Storm Peaks is like peak for zones.
Heck yeah.
Wrath was filled with some of the most memorable landscapes I think I've ever seen in any video game. The fact you can go to the spot where Arthas landed in Northrend, the fact that the Lich King was such a strong villain and built up for all those years. Wrath was I would say the ending of a trilogy. And
it was.
It was like, I don't want to say it had that Legion feel to it, but it had this is it, if we don't win, we're screwed feeling to it, you know? It
felt like the first time an actual antagonist was going to win, basically, because the Lich King was that capable in the lore, from 2002, or was it 2003? 2002 is when it all began with Arthas, and then 2003 was when he became the Lich King. So you had 2003 to 2008 with the Lich King. Well, technically 2007 if you want to get really technical, but that's how long we had with the Lich King. We had 6 years of this build-up. That was a 6-year build-up to the Lich King, and for me, I got to experience that as a Christmas present. I got to join in on that cinematic. The Wrath Lich King cinematic is hands down still my favorite cinematic, and that's saying something when Battle for Azeroth cinematic was really good. All the cinematics are really good. I'm surprised we haven't even talked about that, sadly. I think that we can make that its own subject, honestly, in its own video.
Top
how
10
good the
anime
cinematics
WoW
are.
cinematics. No, just kidding.
Top 10 cinematics. Wrath of the Lich King to me is held dearly, and it still holds up today, in my opinion.
It does.
I quest it every time it's time to level from level 60 to level 80. Yeah, it's 80. 20 levels, I always choose Northrend. Outlands, get out of here. I'm sorry, buddy. Get just the leveling experience, the Lich King, the feel of the North. I love Winter Zones, so Northrend's a hands down my favorite leveling zone. If you could choose between where you wanted to level, I would choose Northrend almost all the time. Mr. Pandaria really makes it run for its money, which is next week, sadly, but
yeah.
I can't wait to talk about Miss. But
Me too.
Honestly, Skull, every time I ever make a top 10 video games list, I know World of Warcraft might be considered one game, but I always specifically label it Wrath of the Lich King because of how nostalgic I am for it and how much I just loved it. I pumped 88 days into my Troll Shaman, and that was just from the Ulduar patch to the last patch of that expansion, which is pretty nuts when you think about it. But it was just, that's when I made my full switch over to Horde. It was in Wrath of the Lich King, and I haven't looked back since. But I always had both. I had my Troll Warrior and my Draenei Priest, but that was, to put it bluntly, that's when I started playing a Troll Elisham for a few years, and it was great. Absolutely great.
Best decision ever that you made.
One of the things I really liked, and I did raid on my Death Knight during this patch, was Naxxramas being brought back. I usually would be one of the first people to be like, oh, that's rehash content, but it wasn't at the time because not a lot of people got to experience it, and it fit really well in the story, I thought, with Wrath of the Lich King. It was a good first-tier boss having Kel'Thuzad come back.
In truth, I didn't experience it. I really didn't get into that kind of gameplay until Miss.
There's a lot more PvP, right? back then.
Yeah, that was pretty much all we did. I didn't do any. I never stepped into raid until Miss. I think. Not even kidding.
Hey, that was a good time to get into it.
Yeah, heck yeah.
I did all of my serious raiding in Wrath of the Lich King. Again, Wrath was really my first expansion in all technicalities because I didn't get to see Burning Crusade. I didn't really get to play much Classic. Wrath was, in my eyes, my first experience in playing WoW realistically, and I really enjoyed every moment of it. And I got to the one rule back then, because I was 11, my parents, well, not really my parents, my mom made this rule where I had to play the game with her essentially to make sure I didn't do anything too unsafe, because it was an RP server too, so you had to be careful with adults
Very much.
at the time with all the stuff that people do in roleplay. There's a lot of ERP and all that, and you don't want to get your child involved in that when they're only 11. So my parent was very careful about that still. But I got to raid with her, which was one of the cool things. I got to experience raiding seriously. I got to do like 10-man heroic Lich King at the time, and I did experience Naxxramas. That was fun. I love the experiencing of just jumping from raid to raid, and I think that's why people really liked Burning Crusade, because they probably had that same experience. So I got to experience, doing the raids when it was current content in Wrath of the Lich King, and I thought it was the coolest thing, because, again, Wrath of the Lich King had some of the best armor in the game.
Oh, it still does.
It still holds up.
Especially.
Like, yeah. As a male hunter, male user, male armor is really hard to come across, and, I wear Mr. Pandaria armor right now, but in Wrath, there were so many cool-looking male armor pieces for hunters. I love.
On my Troll Shaman now, I don't really play him anymore, but I still wear his set from ICC because I consider that his, prime moment in World of Warcraft. The Frost Witches set, I really like that one.
Man, that set is gorgeous. I love it.
I like the normal 25 version with the icicles on the side of it. So good.
Yeah, that's one I like too.
And then the antlers that come out of the side of it, or the little moose every so often.
Mm-hmm.
The shovel tusks coming out, I really like graphic effects that do that type of thing, where animals pop out, or just something cool pops out of the armor. That's always cool when they have that.
So
I was gonna say I kind of like. I typically don't go for armor like that. I like the more humble and I guess subdued armor.
Armor.
Yeah, exactly.
I just like seeing it. I don't really usually wear it, but I like seeing it.
Yeah.
So, can I tell you guys a funny story about my ICC days?
Sure.
So, for weeks, I was in a guild, and I was in, I don't want to say the F team, but, we were the worst team in the guild at the time out of our 25-man group, the Outcast group.
The Benchwarmers?
Yeah, exactly. So, our two other teams in our guild, there's two other 10-man teams, and none of them could, basically get the Lich King or even get close to him. But our team went from the F team to, the S team in the guild. So we ended up, switching roles, but we were the first team to get the 10-man normal Lich King at the time. And I remember specifically, and I hope my mom forgives me for this, but I downed the Lich King. I ran to my mom's, like, Mom, I downed the Lich King. And she's like, I'm so proud of you, Michael. But that was one of my favorite moments from Wrath of the Lich King. And the ICC probably is my all-time favorite raid. Not just for how good the raid and the ambience and the story was in it, but just for the team I played with at the time, too. I still talk to those guys 10 years later now, or 11 years later now. So it's crazy. The friends you make along the way sometimes are the best part about World of Warcraft, and I think that's why a lot of people are nostalgic for a specific expansion or time period, and it might just be related to the people they played the game with,
Yeah.
But gameplay-wise and lore-wise, honestly, going back to those raids, the music, the atmosphere, Ulduar, ICC, Trial of the Crusader even, I love everything about the music and the atmosphere.
Oh, man.
Wrath. They nailed it.
The Arching Crusade was so good. I loved doing that stuff out there.
My only nitpick in Wrath of the Lich King is what they do with Anubarak.
I was about to say that.
That's the only thing that I have against Wrath, is the treatment. Pretty much the thing that happened with Kael'thas and Illidan happened with Anubarak. Like this, I remember playing him in Warcraft 3, and he was this legendary Nerubian king of the Nerubians, the insects that were on Northrend, and he basically suffered the same thing that Arthas did in a way. Like he got corrupted by Ner'zhul and had to betray his own people and raise them as undead, just kind of like how Arthas had to with his own people of Lordaeron. And he became this guide for Arthas when he was, trying to save the Lich King from Illidan and kill Jaden's plan. And they just kind of make him a dungeon boss and then a raid boss, and there's not really a built up to it. There's not really this moment of, oh, this is a Nubarak. This guy's badass.
I would have really liked a Old Kingdom raid. Even if it was, like, in between... Like, so say, like, we have the Trial of the Crusader, and then Anubarak blows up the arena... Or when the Lich King blows up the arena, we get to go through the tunnels a little bit before we fight him, and it would have been a little bit bigger of a tier. I would have enjoyed that. And I
was going to say, we were supposed to get... essentially, Azul Narub was supposed to be a zone. It wasn't supposed to be a dungeon.
That would have been awesome.
We were supposed to get we weren't supposed to get a dungeon. We're supposed to get... Well, we might have gotten a dungeon eventually in the zone, but we were supposed to get an entire zone about, being underground Dragonblight, basically.
Yeah.
Perhaps we'll get an expansion on that
at some point. Or
I've always...
Make that a zone in a revamped Northrend and bring back Anubarak for a third time. Just do it.
I've always thought it'd be really cool if they kind of focused inwardly with expansions, like instead of kind of trying to branch out so much. I've always just loved the idea of just fleshing out what we currently have, just seeing how things kind of meld together, seeing how all these races and stuff that we've recruited and met, like, interact. It can be the most unlikely sort of things, but that's where you find the art. Like seeing how the Draenei and the Blood Elves interact in Shattrath, and seeing... that's one of my favorite things, by the way.
Oddly enough, I didn't mean to cut you off, Kai, but you just brought something to my attention. You know what expansion's been pretty good about that in some aspects? BFA has, like, started to include more of, like, I really like how they use the allied races and stuff like that. Like, you see them around the cities, and they're usually doing stuff for their factions. Not in all ways, don't get me wrong, you know what I mean? But, like, in some ways, they've been using a lot of the minor races more, and I really, really enjoy that.
Definitely, yeah. It's the human versus orc thing is cool, but you gotta kind of...
With how many characters and races they have in this game, I understand.
It's a little tricky to kind of implement everybody, and I feel like, I think it's really hard for Blizzard to kind of detach themselves from that orc versus human vibe, and I don't think it's a bad thing to have it, per se, but it is definitely... I think it's very difficult on those people who don't care about the orcs and humans, and they just care about, let's say, the Night Elves and the Blood Elves. And Blizzard is trying their best to implement them into the story, but when you kind of push away the orcs and humans like they did in Legion, it feels really... when we get to Legion, that's another thing, but when you push away the orcs and the humans, it feels different and not really the best, I think.
Mm-hmm. It has a Warcrafty vibe to it, Yeah. Orcs and humans are, I feel like, the heart and soul of the WoW universe.
They are.
It's, they're almost like yin and yang, I guess, when it comes to that. They
really
balance each other out. But Wrath of the Lich King, overall, I would say, still to this day holds up as my personal favorite expansion. Even as a fan of the Pandaren, I still prefer Wrath of the Lich King. Now, in my dream world, I would have had Pandaren in the game before, so I could have played... No, I'm just kidding. That would be awesome.
They were originally, I believe, intended for BC, weren't they?
I think they were.
They were supposed to be an alliance race, which I don't see it, but that's me.
I would cry if that happened.
Growing up with Shen Stormstout, if they would be like, "Oh, the Pandaren went alliance," I'd be like, "Get the fuck out of here! That's not true." So they were smart.
Yeah, technically, I mean, I don't know. It wouldn't be breaking, I guess, to say. Like, I'm sure they would have come up with a justifiable reason for them to. Like, after that, you'd have been able to come up with something because, you know, they did the same thing with Void Elves, with
Right.
all sorts of other races where they kind of have their own reason for joining.
It's just
But-
the first time we experienced the Pandaren, it's Shen Stormstout, and
Yeah.
for them to be like, oh no, most of the Pandaren, they don't like the Horde. It'd be, you know, it'd feel
be-
weird, and I'm glad that Blizzard made them the first neutral race because they are the perfect race to do that. Honestly,
Oh, it's awesome.
Yeah.
Absolutely
Yeah,
love
definitely,
it.
I love them.
So,
But-
do you guys have anything else you'd like to say about Wrath? Because I know that's a
It-
big topic.
Controversial as it is to damn this kind of thing, I will say the biggest negative thing for Wrath was that it was kind of the start where queuing, I guess automatic queues kind of started taking precedence. Like, it wasn't quite so bad back then. It didn't really obviously diminish the social aspect of the game too much, but that was the beginning of what I would say is a system I personally don't care for. I understand a lot of people do. And
He took a punch.
here, I'm the only person that can defend the queues. I like it. I think it's fine.
I do. I'm honestly, and I know I've been saying this like the whole video. I'm indifferent. Like I don't hate it. I don't love it. I did like the badge system in Wrath. I really enjoyed gearing that way.
Oh, yeah, me too. I think they're kind of bringing it back in the next patch. I'm not entirely sure. I don't read too much on that.
It was a lot of fun going back and grinding the old dungeons to get badges for pre-entry raid gear. I mean, I never saw anything wrong with that in Wrath like that. It was and that was a good way I played with a lot of my friends in guildies. Oh, you need your daily heroic? Yeah, I need to get my badges of valor, and it would be a little bit of a build up, but it's still, the gear felt pretty rewarding back then, to get. It still didn't feel like it was like just handed to you.
Yeah.
Like, I don't want to bash like catch-up gear, but sometimes gear has a pretty diminished value. Like I'm not bashing on modern WoW, but like when I get an Azerite piece, sometimes it doesn't feel that exciting anymore. You know what I mean? Stuff like that. It's just
Yeah. I only get excited if the look looks cool, or if
Me
it gives
too.
me, if it maybe gives me a neat ability that I'm like, oh, that's kind of interesting. Kind of, like they kind of did that in the Crucible of Storms raid, where they kind of added in these interesting abilities to like trinkets and stuff.
that was very cool.
Mm-hmm.
But
So I think now would be a good time to move on to one of WoW's most controversial expansions. And I don't want to cut Wrath short because it deserves a lot of respect, but just for time's sake, 'cause we're at 50 minutes right now.
Right.
I
holy
think-
moly,
Hey, these could go on for hours. Honestly,
realistically could, yeah.
I love this so much.
Me too.
It's one thing about Wrath that was the first time I noticed a content drought at the end. As much as I loved ICC, when that Cata trailer dropped, man, I was so hyped when I was younger. I was like, oh my word, I've never been more excited for a game in my life. You want to hear a really fat story? I remember one day, this is how much I was obsessed with like waiting for Cata. I was outside on my deck, laying there in the summer heat, just being like, I wish I had the beta. Even my mom was like, Michael, get a hobby. I was like, yeah, I know.
I that was my first time waiting for a new expansion, so I really enjoy. The thing that's funny about Cataclysm for me is, I live in Ohio, and we have really crappy winters, basically. And my brother, he got his new car recently, and he was taking me and my sister to school, and we almost got in an accident on the day that Cataclysm came out, and what he ended up doing was he's like, all right, the roads are terrible. They should have canceled school today. We're going to go ahead and head back home. And I got to stay home and play Cataclysm all day, basically. And like when I got back the next day, everybody knew that I wanted to stay home for Cataclysm. So everybody thought that I stayed home because, I wanted to play Cataclysm. And I was like, nope, I almost got in an accident, so you can go away.
So, funny story, I blatantly took the day off for that, and even all my teachers knew about it when I was in high school. They were like, oh, how was World of Warcraft, Mike, when I came back the next day? But it was, it was interesting. But,
Yeah, My teachers thought the same thing too. It wasn't just the kids. They were like, "You stayed home and played World of Warcraft. You have to catch up on your work today." Like they were serious about it. They weren't joking about it. They were mean. I did not. Middle school sucked.
Oh gosh, I can only imagine that. It's like, yeah, no, I remember some of my teachers were kind of like that too. They would get like, you know.
Yeah.
And it's like, on brighter news though, Cataclysm was out, and my gosh, again, when they announce I get really excited when they announce new races, like even the allied races. Like anytime there's an expansion announcement, I'm like, Blizzard, lay on those new races for me, please. Like I love them. Now I'm running into the problem where I don't want to replay like every class with the allied races, but I again, it's a feature I really enjoy, is having those new models to play with, and just I'm an altaholic. I really like playing a bunch of different characters, so having that's a great thing for me. So the goblins and the worgen were great, and I thought they were a really good choice to add into the game. Out of the two, I probably ended up liking the worgen more, but I still like the goblins a lot in the story.
You know, you'd think I'd like the worgens a lot, but I ended up liking the goblins more. It's one of those weird things where, I like wolves, I like werewolves, I like British people. I don't know why. But I don't know why. I don't know why, but I really liked the goblins. I thought they were the greatest addition to the horde. Like, I wanted to say something about the Blood Elves when we were talking about it, but the Blood Elves did not feel like a horde race, and they still don't feel like a horde race. That's kind of the point of the Blood Elves. The Blood Elves are supposed to feel left field. I mean, I know so many people who play Blood Elves just because they look pretty and just because they don't look like monsters, but I love the look of the goblins. I love their attitude. I love Gallywix, even if he is a dirtbag. I love that they gave him a new model in Legion, and that was much more fitting to his what he's supposed to be. He's supposed to be this big old fat goblin with gold chains and rings and this fur coat and this top hat. Like, that's what I wish that he looked like, but, it took them forever to make that.
I wish I could play as one of those, honestly.
I was gonna say the goblin starting zone was also really fun. I liked the story of Gilneas. I really enjoyed it. The lore behind Sylvanas trying to take Gilneas. I really liked the continuation in Silver Pine. Just the whole world felt alive in Cataclysm. Like, the problem was nobody really played the leveling zones as much as they should have.
It's like that. That's the thing I really liked about Cataclysm in general, was the overarching story. The thing, just stay on the goblins really quick. I really like their starting area. Gallywix, I'm glad, is finally getting some love now, because I always thought he was really interesting, in like a funny way throughout the zone. I have a hard time replaying that zone just because of how long it is nowadays, but I did love it at the time. And the goblins, I like the value they add into the horde, and I like how their technology is shown a lot nowadays. And even just after that moment when they joined, they really proved their value. I love the cannon in Ajara that some say is pointed at Stormwind, I believe.
Yeah, there's a little television, basically, and it has Stormwind on its link. So it's ready to be... I'm sure that'd be awesome if they, that'd be so cool if Sylvanas is just like, alright, Gallywix, time to make them bleed. Just tells Gallywix to open fire, and that's a cinematic, and the Stormwind... I believe it's actually a mission table thing, that the Alliance disables the gun, and then Horde reassembles it, basically.
Oh, man. Cata did, I would consider Cata a middle-of-the-pack expansion for me. Just because I didn't care for the whole disconnected zones thing too much. However, I cannot deny how ambitious Cata was of an expansion and how much content and work Blizzard put into it. You can see it everywhere you look. They redid the whole freaking world. I mean, the raids were pretty great in Cata. It was a great expansion. I can't complain about it. Looking back at it, the thing that gave me a sour attitude towards it was Dragon Soul and the way they handled Deathwing's death. I actually quit WoW for a little bit after that. I didn't care for that. like to a really bad point, but I really did enjoy early Cata in the Firelands. I thought that was a great addition to the game. And again, the Altaholic thing. You have Troll Druids now. You have the new class combos. You got the new races. I mean, there was so much to it. New Orgrimmar, new zone. Like, it was just so much to see. And the crazy thing is, even after all these years, it's been out just as long as Vanilla, if longer now. I still see new things sometimes in that leveling revamp when I play through it.
Yeah.
It was great. And the only thing that I wish Blizzard had done was have the scaling levels back then.
Oh, that would have been much better. That would have probably saved Cataclysm, honestly. What I probably would have done differently with Cataclysm is I would have made it somehow possible to revisit old WoW and make the Cataclysm WoW basically the new zone. Like, if you're leveling from level 80 to 85, you go to Silverpine. Like, you go to specific hot spots, and you could, basically level up by one level by doing the entire zone. I feel like that would have been great to have, like, because Silverpine was fantastic as far as a questing zone.
That was one of the best ones they did, for sure. Watch your clever mouth.
I was about to say that. Watch your mouth, clever bitch.
That's another thing that's really interesting about Cataclysm was the tone shift of the Horde, because you basically had Thrall dipping out to be World Shaman, and then you had Garrosh taking over as War Chief. And that just changed everything, really, about the Horde at that time.
Sure did.
I really liked, that new... I didn't like the new generation of orcs, but I loved the attitude, some of them. Not like the Kromgar ones, but the more, not war-hungry, but you know what I mean? Like the orcs that Garrosh had in his Horde, I guess, if that makes any sense.
Yeah.
Like the next generation of them after Thrall's Horde. It was really interesting to see the difference. We could talk about Garrosh's character, but it would be... I think one of the reasons they killed Garrosh off afterwards was because of all the hate that he got when they made him War Chief in Cata. Like, I don't think that was originally the intent to kill him off and miss, to tell you the truth, or Warlords, but...
Yeah, I don't think people liked him as much. I didn't like him as much compared to Thrall. I was like, where's Thrall? I want Thrall back. Why'd you take him away? Like,
I will admit, I was one of those people posting about that. I did not care for Garrosh being War Chief. I feel like it was just improper execution.
Yeah.
Like, they had a good idea, but again, the execution just wasn't right.
I liked Thrall better too. At the time I was willing to give Hellscream a chance.
I was too. Like,
it's just yeah.
Thrall had faith in him, and I was like, all right, I like Thrall. I'm gonna put faith in what Thrall says, and unfortunately, Thrall was proven wrong. As much as I love the guy, that was his biggest flop that he ever did as War Chief. It was the last thing he did as War Chief too, which is yeah.
That was his that was, again, like we were talking about BC, but Cata was, again, it was a reboot thing. It was almost like a vanilla WoW expansion, right? Like, it was almost like another game that started the, Legion trilogy from Mist to Legion, That's how I look at it. I think Cata was, again, in the BFA, I think is the same way. It's a transitional expansion. It's not really filler, but it's the start of something greater. I think right now I'd consider the next thing we go into is going to be the Old God and Void trilogy, whatever, But
I'm really hoping that we get another world revamp like Cataclysm, but taking the lessons that they did with Cataclysm, because if you put too much time in the entire world and not everyone's going to experience that, it's not going to be that good.
They have to make it so everybody experiences it, pretty much.
Yeah.
I mean, I would not be opposed to them scaling everyone to the same level and just having them experience it all. You know what I mean? After all this, I wouldn't be opposed to that.
Yeah, they did say something about toning everybody down back to level 60 because the levels are getting too high now.
I'd be cool with that.
I'm indifferent.
Yeah, I was gonna say. Yeah, I was gonna say I'm just kind of indifferent. I think. I don't know. The numbers don't really bother me too much.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, they are just numbers. I think from a gameplay point of view, if they do something like that, they need to scale everyone to an equal point. So if you make a new character, you start at that point and just have that be the game. I mean, but the thing they could do is with the older expansions, give players the choice to do it and have them scale as optional zones if they wanted to go play through Mists of Pandaria or Legion. You could always add those dungeons to the dungeon queue while you're leveling or something, you know?
Yeah, I think WoW has a rare problem where it's got too much content, but like so much of that content is dated, but you still have to endure that dated content in order to get a
Right.
character to max.
Yeah.
So it's you kind of have to have another Cataclysm-esque world revamp at this point, if you ask me.
Mhm.
But I would say don't after that be like, okay, now you have to go after, through BC, then Lich King and blah blah blah. Like,
Oh gosh.
I would say,
Yeah.
like, have that Cataclysm revamp, but let that lead you right into current world,
Yeah.
and just have the option to be able to visit, old world Azeroth.
That is honestly so confusing when you're leveling from level 1 to 60 and then it's time. Because, like, Cataclysm's leveling zone takes place immediately after Wrath of the Lich King. So, say you do a level 1 to 60. Alright, cool. It's time to go to Northrend. I did Silverpine not too long ago. It said the Lich King's dead. Nope, he's back.
If I was a new player, I'd be like, what the heck is going on?
And then you got Garrosh, and you're like, alright, hi Garrosh, what's up? You used to be War Chief. And then you were dead, and then, okay, this is confusing.
Yeah,
like, that's how it feels.
The Worgen Death Knight timeline.
I think I haven't gotten a Pandaren off the Isle in forever, but don't they still see Garrosh when
they
they
do?
get off?
Yeah, he still does his speech and everything.
And then you have Sylvanas, and it's nothing. You have no idea what came in between that. If you're a brand new player, like if you're a genuine brand new player, you will have no idea.
Yeah, it's gonna be one giant mind. It's gonna be one giant mind fuck, honestly.
Completely.
So, as far, not to interrupt you guys, but as far as like Cata, what would you guys grade it compared to other expansions, or would you put it in that vanilla category as like a reboot, as its own thing? Because I give Blizzard a lot of credits for I gave them a lot of crap at the time about it, but looking back, I give them a lot of credit for pulling something like that off.
That still was at the point where I was just now transitioning out of the PvP thing, but still mainly did PvP. And I would say from a PvP perspective at the time, it was solid. I had a lot of fun. But that's really all I can add. I did actually absolutely love the elemental aspect of things, and I still think that's one of my absolute favorite things about Cata is because I love the elements, I love shamanism.
Yeah.
And
the Earthen Ring was so good. I was
so
okay.
good. I
So
love them.
not to get into too many lore things, but I was always really bothered that like, well, the Earthen Thrall was there, but I always was hoping there'd be like was there an army of shaman and dragons? So I forget, but I was always hoping there would have been more.
So, in Hour of Twilight, there was a bunch of Earthen Rings helping out Thrall get to the Wormer's Temple, and they end up dying because the old god minions kill them. Basically, Thrall's the only one that's left.
Oh, okay. Because I was always hoping they would. I mean, I know they kind of were like the Argent Crusade of that expansion, but I was kind of hoping they would have had more. They had a lot of involvement, but I don't know, in like cutscenes and stuff, it would have been interesting.
I honestly feel like Dragon Soul deserved its own quest line. And we should have gotten Deathwing got, how Lich King basically got like all this love being the big bad.
Yeah,
Deathwing should have gotten more of that love because he appeared in zones and he appeared in some quests, but he didn't appear enough. And I felt like one of the things that I always felt bad about Deathwing was he got forced into this job. The Lich King, at least Arthas to a degree, chose this gig.
right.
Deathwing was just kind of like, it was thrown at him, and I always thought that Deathwing, out of all the antagonists in WoW, screw Garrosh, screw Lich King, screw Illidan, Deathwing should have been redeemed. And I think this is something I've talked about before. It would have been so much cooler if Deathwing was the Speaker of Azeroth instead of Magni.
I would have been cool with that. I mean, his design too is awesome. By the way, we can't forget.
Yeah.
that.
Deathwing had the best dragon design in this game. It still holds up. I love
the jaw.
I love the
God.
jaw too. I really liked Shaman Thrall. I know it gets a lot of flack,
too.
but I liked it. I like Shaman.
dude.
I still prefer Warchief Thrall, and I think the Worlds of Draenor Thrall was the best version we got of him, except until now. But I won't bring that up yet. But I really liked Thrall in Cataclysm, and I know he got a lot of hate, but he got his wife. You know, that was really just like Thrall's like breakout point where he could basically retire, and then all the shit with Garrosh happened. Sadly,
Yeah.
His story is really honestly tragic. But what were you gonna say, Kai? I didn't mean to interrupt.
Oh no, you're good. I was gonna say there's no reason why he can't really be both. Like he can be War Chief Thrall and Shaman Thrall. I never quite.
right?
Man, I just
If
I
if
never saw
very,
them
the
different.
Horde had a shift somewhere.
I hated, like, I think the problem was Thrall was so busy with cleaning up what Deathwing did. Was he was, you know, he finally got this break where he could basically be a father to his new kid Durak, who is a mixture between Durotan and Draka's names merged together. That's a little fun fact I'll throw in there. But you know, Thrall just wanted to be a father, and I feel like what they should have done, instead of Thrall just being like, I'll just let Garrosh do his thing, I'm sure everything will be fine. You know, Thrall admitted that things were not going to be okay while he was gone. That's like the first thing he admitted when he made Garrosh War Chief. Things are going to change, things are going to suck for a little bit, but if you push on through, if you teach Garrosh what to do, I'm sure it'll be fine. The problem was, people really didn't like Garrosh. Vol'jin, Karen, Sylvanas, it went on with so many of the leaders of the Horde telling Garrosh to piss off, and not giving Garrosh the chance he needed to grow. And so Garrosh became what he did. He became a dictator, became a douchebag. And, you know, you just... Thrall believed too much in Garrosh, and I think that at some point Garrosh and Thrall should... I think Thrall should have come back way sooner, and I think that Thrall has every right to be a father, world shaman, and a war chief all at once. Because if Varian can do it, Thrall can do it. Thrall can do it 10 times over than Varian.
I want to title this episode now. If Varian can do it, Thrall can do it.
If Varian can do it, Thrall can do it. Make that my poster.
Thrall honestly doesn't. I mean, I could do a whole nother episode on this, but related to Cata Thrall, he doesn't deserve nearly the amount of hate he gets. Honest to God, he's a great character still. Thrall is the heart and soul of the Warcraft universe, in my opinion. Whenever I picture World of Warcraft or the Horde, he immediately comes to mind, usually, for me.
It's funny because he's the character that they use to show World of Warcraft on their WoW on their Blizzard website, blah blah blah. So that makes sense.
Yeah, definitely.
I really like as far as I'd rate Cataclysm, because I was gonna say this, because Wrath of the Lich King for me, it's tied with Mr. Pandaria. I often say Mr. Pandaria is the best and Wrath of the Lich King is the second best. If I had to push that, I would, because Mr. Pandaria was just amazing story-wise, theme-wise, and everything, but I won't talk about that here.
That's next week.
But Wrath of the Lich King for me was number 1, and Cataclysm is on the shaky ground of I like it and I don't like it at the same time, so for me I put it in the middle. I liked Cataclysm.
That's exactly the same place I have it on my tier list, right next to Burning Crusade, right in the middle.
It's better than Warlords, but it's not better than Legion. That's where I put it right.
Yeah, I'd second that.
Of the first 4 expansion, well, I mean, including Classic, so that's not really an expansion. I actually would have to make it the lowest, but that's just me personally. I would say my favorite time was definitely Vanilla. I know it's, such a cliche thing, but just being real, even with the nostalgia aside. Then Lich King. Then probably BC. Then, Cata, of the first 4.
We probably should have listed our lists both at the start.
I guess for my first 4, Wrath of the Lich King is still my favorite, obviously. Then I'd probably say Burning Crusade, and then Cata, and I would put, honestly, Vanilla as its own thing. Again, I can't really put it next to the other ones, but just in terms of expansions, Wrath is still just incredible.
If I had to list the 4 that we only did, Wrath of the Lich King number 1, Cataclysm number 2, Burning Crusade, no, so number 1 would be Wrath, number 2 would be Cataclysm, number 3 would be Classic, and number 4 would be Burning Crusade. again, I didn't get to play Burning Crusade when it was current, and I don't like it as much. Classic WoW is that weird. I don't remember it too much to really say my piece on it, but I remember playing it, so I enjoyed Classic WoW, what I got to do at least. But maybe I am gonna reword what I just said. Probably Classic WoW and Burning Crusade are really on this like equal thing with me right now, because I didn't get to play much of it. But if I would probably have to choose, Burning Crusade, I guess, is better than Classic for me at least right now.
I get you.
Well, I think that leads us nicely into our topic for next week, and that's Mists of Pandaria, Warlords of Draenor, Legion, and Battle for Azeroth.
Can't wait.
That was a hell of an episode, guys. I want to thank you guys both for your time. I think that was our longest one yet, but there's a lot to talk about. And honestly, each of those expansions, we could have done their own episode, to tell you the truth. It was just...
Realistically, yeah.
Yeah, in fact, that's not a bad idea.
We'll have to do that at some point. We'll go back and, maybe take a more in-depth look at them. But as of right now, I really enjoyed this one, guys. Thank you so much for being on again. So, to anyone who comes across this, make sure you check these two out. Skull Shorties on YouTube, Jakai on Discord and Twitter. Potentially maybe looking into doing videos soon.
Potentially, if I have to.
I second that. He should do some epic lore videos.
Thank you.
He's the true speaker of the Huaojin. If I said their name right, I always get it wrong, even though I love them to death. I just can't pronounce anything.
Huaojin. Yep. Fire and Steel.
Oh, dude, I love that so much. It's so good. Thank you so much for watching. We'll see you next time.
Ciao.